Hi, Kat.
Hi, Tiffany. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Doing all right. Making it
Um,
make it through the week.
yeah, with your new puppy.
My dear puppy. She is my life. She is my world.
She's forced her way into your being your entire world.
Yeah, basically. She does this thing where if I sit on the bed to like grab my phone, she like asks to come on the bed and then she rolls on her back and makes me rub her belly. And she does that all night. She sleeps at the foot of the bed and then if you wake up in the morning you're like time to go outside, she just rolls on her back and like rub my belly. She doesn't even want to go potty. So, she's got her priorities straight.
Yeah, there you go. Man, if I could get belly rubs, I totally would.
I know they tickle. I know they tickle me a lot.
Yeah, maybe back rubs. I need a
Yeah.
massage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you get that knot under my left
Yeah,
scapula there, yeah, I'm into
the
it.
40 knots.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so today, guess what? We're talking about ride shares.
Woohoo!
And I wanted to ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
How sustainable, like just off the top of your head, how sustainable do you think ride shares are?
I'm of several minds of this because I feel like they're better than individuals driving themselves. They're not as sustainable as buses, I would say, but then there's like the economic aspect of it, which is that the people who drive them are basically underpaid. Yeah, there's like an economic sustainability issue with it. Like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like Uber drivers and Lyft drivers are totally taken advantage of.
Right.
So, I'm gonna put it like obviously walking and biking is the most sustainable option we've talked about for, you know, day-to-day commuting so far, and like the bottom of the daily commute would be like your individual driver. So I'm gonna put it above individual drivers, but like below buses.
Okay. Well, you know what's fascinating
What's
is that
that?
it turns out that there is analysis from the Union of Concerned Scientists, they're not the only ones, that shows that ride hailing trips today are about 69% more polluting than the types of trips
Damn
they're
it.
replacing.
Damn it. I guess because okay. Oh, well, we'll get into that. Okay, that doesn't. It upsets me, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I found it kind of surprising, and we'll get into like why exactly, but yeah. Welcome to Greening Up My Act. Alrighty. So there we are. And here
There
we
we go.
are.
There we are. Yes, sorry. I was like trying to unmute my mic and
Oh, you're
failing miserably.
yeah, so that kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, it's a great lead in to this episode because it's like, what do you think? And I'm like, oh, they gotta be better, and they don't. They don't.
I know. Well, that's how everybody's talked about them for forever since they were
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
So, because you'll see that they kind of get lumped in with a lot of other
Public
shared.
public transit
Well,
options.
public
Yeah.
transit, more like shared. It's called shared mobility.
Okay. Okay. And that's something
And
that
you can
okay.
kind of have a picture of what that means. So,
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
become popular in the last like decade or so.
Yeah.
All right. So first off, why don't you tell ourselves and our listeners who are we?
Let's remind ourselves who we are, Tiffany. We are strong, independent girl bosses. We're not. Okay. We are,
No, ew, gross.
yeah. We are Greening Up My Act. And we are a podcast that was created by two marketing writers who worked together writing marketing
Mm-hmm.
stuff and discovered we had a shared passion for sustainability and eco-friendliness, and that we found that we were overwhelmed by marketing and products trying to help individuals live a more sustainable lifestyle. And we wanted to explore that using our marketing expertise to dig through the greenwashing, or green hooey, as we call it, and see if there are actually products, services, lifestyle changes that we all can make to live more sustainably and what's just junk.
Yep. Yeah, and another big thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately is like how to take our rage at
Yes.
not only at these products, some of it is at like products and services that claim to be things that they're not, and that is infuriating. But a lot of it is like governments,
Yes.
and no offense, but previous generations,
Yes. Well, and cultural.
cultural norms.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, cultural norms, consumerism, all of that. Yeah, the rage that we have about these things and how we can find ways to mitigate that or channel it.
Yeah. Yes. Take that rage and use it for good.
Yeah.
And yeah, try to not be rageful about articles telling us that we should be planting more trees, but instead be rageful that there aren't enough trees to begin with.
Yes,
Or
that there are
both. I don't
corporations
know.
actively destroying trees instead of
Yes.
trying to conserve them. Yeah, and getting away with
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which actually, I just saw this really good. I think it might only be on BritBox. I'm kind of obsessed with British stuff. So I
Yeah.
subscribe. You can subscribe through Amazon Prime or Amazon Video or whatever. Anyway, it's called Sandy's Woods. It's a show. And if you can find it, you should watch it because it's basically this British comedian. You might recognize her from the British Bake Off. She was there. She was a host for a couple of seasons.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
She bought like 15 acres of woodland in England and is basically trying to save it and preserve
Wow.
it and figure out like the last episode she brought in some bat people and they tried really hard to find like a super rare bat so she could, preserve it past her lifetime and
Oh, wow.
have some sort of legal way to preserve it, but it didn't work. They found some cool bats but nothing like super
Not
rare.
the right bats.
But if you see that show on, it's really good because she's kind of like dealing with this whole issue of like something I think all of us deal with where what can I do? It doesn't feel like enough, but I can do my small part. And in my mind, she's doing a lot because it's like 15 acres of woodland. Like that's great,
Yeah.
but there's always more. So
Yeah.
it's just a really good show. So
Oh, and I can hear her voice in my head from the Great British Baking Show. So
yes, she's awesome.
yeah, she's hilarious. I know. Yeah.
She was only on there for a couple of seasons, but
like 2 or 3. Yeah.
yeah, I always liked her.
Yeah.
But
She's
apparently
great.
she was like a kid's, very famous in England, but less in the U.S. But she was a kid's. She started off with like a kids show. I think that was
Oh.
her first gig, which is kind of interesting.
It's always fascinating where stars and comedians especially come from.
I know. So, anywho, that's who we are. So we're like normal people dealing with all of the feelings of this world, in the world we live in, and grappling with what the hell we can do. And we're also trying to figure out like which products are flat out lying to us, and which products are like actually pretty cool and worth your time.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the other thing is the investment aspect. Like we're normal. We don't have millions and millions of dollars.
Yes.
We don't have like spare time. We have day jobs. We have night
Yes.
jobs. We have families. We have,
Yep.
things we have to attend to that aren't just focusing on this full time. We're not Instagram influencers who
Right.
only do this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're busy just like
Yeah.
everybody else. So,
Yeah.
yep. So that's us.
Yeah.
So I'll get into my sources real quick.
Cool.
So I think I had 6, but it's fine. We try to keep it at 5, but we've only, oops, hold on. I almost accidentally clicked out of the studio. I'm good. That would be sad. So I used Hire Car, which is just it's basically like a it's like kind of like a rental car for like a temporary rental car.
Like a
kind of
zip car
thing.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
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 Okay.
But they have this whole blog post about sustainability claims, and it really was fascinating. And then I used a couple of the scientific ones were Union of Concerned Scientists, Yale Environment Review, and the National Resources Defense Council. And then I also looked at Uber shares their green goals. I don't know what exactly they call it, but yeah, their environmental goals, which were really interesting. And I also just got a real quick stat from Rideshare Guy.
Rideshare Guy. Okay. He sounds like an expert as far
Yeah,
as...
exactly. He's at least marketing himself as one. And I believed him. So, all right. So what we're talking about today is ride sharing, which I wanted to get into a little bit because a lot of people confuse this online and also just in our minds. Because I also was like, wait, what exactly is ride sharing versus car sharing? Because a lot of times those things are spoken of like synonyms, but they're not really. So
yeah,
ride share is like Lyft or Uber.
Okay.
Those are the things that I focus on today. Car sharing is more like Zipcar, like you said. So like you have sort of like a short-term rental car.
Yeah.
That you're
belongs
driving.
to somebody else. Yeah.
It belongs to somebody else, but you're driving it. So
and
it could belong driven around.
Right. It could belong to a company or it could belong to an individual.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually there are apps that let you rent out your own car.
My neighbor who moved out a couple months ago had like 2 Porsches that he kept on the street and would like people would come pick them up and they always when they brought them back would park in front of my driveway.
Oh my god.
So I don't have much love for that. I'm like, why do you need a Porsche? What are you doing?
Yeah, well that's pretty brave actually to let strangers drive your Porsche.
I can't imagine the insurance premiums. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But he didn't ever drive them himself. He just I guess he made enough money off of it to afford the payments on them and
wow. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. And now we like to look at what eco-friendly claims these products or these systems, which this is more of a system, is making. And kind of like you thought, Kat, most people think, I think anyway, that the common myth, I guess, is that because there are fewer cars on the road with ride shares, therefore there are fewer greenhouse gases created.
Right.
So that's this myth that's out there. That's this claim that Hire Car, the company, is also making all over their blog post. And there's a claim that there are fewer cars on the road. That claim for Hire Car comes from this 2015 UC Berkeley study. That's their evidence in the entire blog post.
Wow. Okay. Which is before, well, I guess it's kind of right when Lyft and Uber started.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of before they took off like crazy. Yeah. So that's part of it. But also the study looked at all shared mobility options. So shared bikes, shared like scooters, shared cars, shuttle services, on-demand ride services. So it looked at all of the above and came to these conclusions. So it was not just
so that's not fair
at
all.
No.
Yeah. If you're throwing shared bikes in there, that doesn't... Yeah, that's going to skew everything. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was kind of funny. I was like, okay. So they're the people who are saying, oh, this is so good for the good for the environment. And that's their proof. And also, yeah, it's kind of old, like 2015. Yes, Uber and Lyft were around. They were around big time, but they've just been getting exponentially bigger and more in use as the years go by. So that's going to change your data too.
Yeah.
And in fact, according to Yale Environment Review, that sounds wrong. Environmental.
I know.
Review.
It should be environmental review.
I probably wrote it wrong, to be honest. Well. It's fine. So according to them, researchers from the University of Kentucky and the San Francisco County Transportation Authority found that ride sharing is the biggest contributor to traffic congestion in San Francisco.
Ouch.
Right? And they were looking at traffic congestion in particular because, like, I don't know, it kind of makes sense. Like, the more cars, the more
Yeah.
greenhouse gases.
Well, yeah, and I wonder if like it displaces a bus ride, right? You might have taken the bus
Yes.
and instead you're taking, yeah, okay.
Yep. And that is a part of it. That's a big part of it. And we'll get into that. And the study also shows that most ride sharing trips add new cars to the road that wouldn't otherwise be there.
Also makes sense. I have to say that a lot of the people who I have used rideshare from have been like, they come from out of town and drive around Austin on Friday and
Mm-hmm.
Saturday nights. Okay.
Yep.
And they'd be
Yeah.
back at home in San Marcos otherwise. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Damn.
And so researchers observed that people used ride sharing services, just like you said, when they would have otherwise walked, biked, or used public transportation. So that makes traffic even worse. And that is so true. Because when I was in DC, I would say most of my friends, maybe not in the beginning, but like we were all broke in our
Yeah.
20s. And yet a lot of my friends Ubered everywhere. And I was
Yeah.
like, how
How do
are you
you,
guys affording this? This is
it's almost as
insane
much
to
as a
me.
car on a certain, like,
Yeah. I
yeah,
had
it's like,
friends who had cars and they still Ubered everywhere.
yeah, it, like, I'll take it to the airport a lot and
Yeah,
it'll be like
same.
30, 40 bucks to get to the airport, you know,
Yeah. And how
which
far is
is,
that drive for you?
it's a 10-minute, 15-minute drive.
Oh yeah,
Like,
you told me about this. That's
yeah.
insane.
Or, you
That's
know,
insane.
like, we ordered an Uber a couple weeks ago. We had taken the bus downtown and walked to our friend's house downtown, and then it was too far and too late to walk back, so we took an Uber, and it was like $50 or something,
Oh
like
my
2 miles, just because it was surge pricing in downtown. And then we ended up doing the shared ride with
God. Uh-huh.
like three other drunk people, which
Yeah,
was
I'm gonna
just
talk about
not.
that.
Yeah. Anyway, so it
3,
was
that's a
so
lot
it was still
in
like
one
30
car.
bucks. But yeah, well yeah, it was like 4. I think they had an extra one person more than they were supposed to, so like somebody had to sit in someone's
Oh.
lap, which was
Oh
not
my
my favorite
god.
thing, but
Insane.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about the shared option in a minute,
Yeah.
but yeah, my airport's about 25-30 minutes away and I spent 50 or 60 bucks one way.
Yeah.
And I was just like, Jesus Christ.
I
Like
know. That's like an airline.
this.
That's a quarter of an airline ticket.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I could freaking fly there and
Yeah.
then just
It
lay
might be
over at the
cheaper.
airport.
Yeah, it might be cheaper for me to park my car in
It
the
is
$2
actually.
parking.
I learned this after I paid all this money because it's like $8 a day to park at my airport,
Oh,
which
that's it.
my trip was only 4 days, so it would have been like probably less than half the price of a round trip. Maybe
Yeah.
even a quarter of the price. Oh my god. Anyway,
Yeah.
it is what it is, but yes, I think I would do that next time.
Yeah.
Oh.
I might consider that.
Yeah. But it's like, it's just crazy to me that so many, because it's so true, like so many people just whip out their phone and Uber.
It's easy.
And yeah, and instead of like, it's just human. People are
Yeah.
trying to be like, everyone's
Convenient.
looking for the convenience.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and then
But
like there is something to be said for the responsibility of like not drinking and driving. I think that's
right.
the one thing that Uber and Lyft are like, that's super important to me because I know a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people who, especially Austin, Albuquerque, all these Western cities have a lot of driving culture and a lot of drinking culture. And it's so dangerous. And
Yeah.
just, it's like, just get somebody else to drive you, dude. Just,
Yeah.
that's worth it to me. But
Yes, that is definitely true. But I know people who would like Uber to work, Uber home from work
yeah,
every day. And I was
yeah.
like, what?
I had a
That's
colleague who
crazy.
would do that, and I was like, "Are you insane?" Yeah,
Yeah, and they like lived on bus routes. Anyway,
yeah.
it's okay if you do that. It's just like, where do you get the funds for it?
I know.
Tell me your
What?
secret.
Are you not buying groceries? Are you not paying your heating bill? I don't know.
Yeah, and I found that there are actually 64 billion trips taken in 2022
$64 billion,
with Uber alone. So that doesn't even count Lyft.
and that's around the world.
I don't know, actually. I was just thinking that. I'm not sure. That was from the rideshare guy.
I mean, they're not in China. They're not in India. I
Yeah.
think you've.
Wait,
I
they
don't
actually
think.
offer services across 72 countries.
Okay.
So they might be there.
So wow.
Yeah, this doesn't actually say where, so
Yeah.
it's fine. Rideshare guy. It's fine.
Yeah.
But still, 64 billion is
Yeah.
insane. That's an insane number no matter if it's around the world or in the U.S. So.
I mean, yeah, that's almost 10 rides a person. Not almost, but
yeah,
9 rides a person. Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, so this it competes. Okay, so one interesting thing, which I didn't really look into, but apparently rideshares compete with buses, like you said, but they actually can complement and encourage rail travel. And I think that's because, for example, in Japan, this is a good example because Japanese rail transit is so awesome.
Developed. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we took the subway to this, the stop, and then we needed to get to the actual train station. So we took an Uber, and that was like a really short ride, but it was in between two rail, whatever. So, and actually Uber is starting to work with some metros and subway systems to try to for some of them you can actually buy like tickets for public trans on Uber. So I don't know, I'll get into a little bit of what they're trying to do with their green initiatives, and some of them are kind of cool, but but they do compete with buses 100% because people are like, oh, I don't want to wait for the bus. Or there were times where the bus took an hour and a half and I was like, fuck this, I'm going to just Uber.
Yeah, it'll be 10 minutes on an Uber.
Yeah. But I usually was too cheap for that, so. Yeah. And only 13 to 20% of people split rides like you did. Like do the shared
because it's terrifying and overwhelming, and like I've done the first time I did it was in New York, and like there were 4 other people sharing the Uber with me, and it took as long as like a bus would have,
I know.
I just had my luggage with me, and I was like, I'll just do this. It'll be cheaper if I ride share it, and it was cheaper, but it took as long as a bus, and it, I still was sitting with strangers, I think he even dropped one off, picked one up. Oh, there was one woman who had a baby, and he's like, you can't get in the car without a car seat. And we had to argue with her for like 20 minutes about it. And I was like,
that's insane.
I'm sorry, lady.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's rough. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really rough. Yes. So, I've taken back when it was called Uber Pool. I didn't even know the name had changed, but I've taken it a couple times, and it's either most people get in and don't talk to anybody. They just like have their headphones on and stare at their phones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But some people get in and they want to have be best friends, and you're like, ugh.
I'm tired. It's just like getting on an airplane. Yeah.
Yes.
You don't know who's gonna chat you up.
Yeah, which sometimes it's cool. Like I had a really good conversation. I had an awesome conversation actually. I should tell you about this. She knows Steve. Remember Steve?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, she knew, she was listening to one of his podcasts, and I was like, I know the guy who edits that. And she's like, oh, Steve? I was like, what?
Oh my God,
it was
that's
so
hilarious.
weird. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, so you can have really cool conversations with Lyft drivers, but so anywho's, so the Union of Concerned Scientists, as mentioned, said that 69%, so ride-hailing trips today are about 69% more polluting than the types of trips they're replacing. So why is this? I found that really interesting. One of them is what's called deadheading, which is the amount of time that they're driving around where there's no rider in the car.
Okay.
So it's like from one drop-off to the next pickup. Like sometimes I think people drive to, maybe the airport's not a great example because I think you might usually be able to find somebody to bring back from the airport.
Right.
But maybe not always. But if you drive a long ways out, like I used to live kind of in the middle of nowhere. If somebody's driving me out there, they're probably going to have to drive a little ways to get
to pick up another
the next
rider.
Pickup. Yeah. So that's called deadheading, and that can drastically reduce the efficiency. And plus, if you think about it, it's like if I drove myself to the airport, I would be driving one way. Yeah. Whereas they're going to be driving.
Ways.
Yeah.
4 even. I mean, like if you count.
Possibly, yeah. And like we mentioned, it displaces other better transit. So people gonna people, which means they're gonna choose the most convenient options.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So there's all that, right? There are a few positives that we can talk about. Like, Uber has a goal to be a zero emission mobility platform in the United States, Canada, and certain European cities by 2030.
Okay.
Zero emission.
So
Zero emission
not,
in 6 years.
I mean, that's kind of the US's goal,
Yeah.
but so how do you do that if you're using private?
Exactly. So
They only hire electric cars? Like, I don't know.
well, that's kind of part of it, but not really. They're not going to, I don't think they're going to be able to say, like, you have to have an electric car if
Right.
you want to use Uber. They do incentivize drivers to switch to EVs. Like, they give them sort of like partner discounts, and they give them, I think they can make like 200 bucks extra per month if they have an electric vehicle, if they make a certain number of whatever.
But that doesn't even cover the difference in
But
cost.
that's not
between,
even, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's just so cost prohibitive. And I have heard that used electric vehicles, did we talk about that?
Yeah, I talked about that. Yeah.
That's what I
They're-
thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's a way to get into electric vehicle
Yeah.
ownership.
Or
But
I think actually, yeah, I sent you an article a couple weeks ago after we did the EV video that electric cars are now cheaper than, yes. I posted that on our Instagram.
That's right.
We've reached a point where electric vehicles are cheaper than new conventional vehicles, I guess.
So, like,
It's kind of
used EVs are cheaper than new regular cars. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
so,
Right. And you just have to get comfortable with the fact that you're not going to get any of that money back
yeah.
on your electric vehicle that's used. But Joe pointed out, because we were talking about it the other day, he was like, cars are not an investment. You
No.
really don't get much back.
You're throwing
no
money
matter
away no matter what.
kind of car.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is true. You just have to
It's not your
consider it.
house. It's not
Yes.
going to appreciate in value. Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, I was like, I don't think that's enough, Uber, to make your entire business model zero emissions. But hey, you're trying, I guess. And like I said, they're partnering with certain public transit authorities. So you can like buy the transit tickets on Uber app. I think I saw on their website that they partner with the DC Metro. So
Okay.
that's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
I don't use it enough to really see it or know.
Yeah,
what that
I
means or
haven't
what that
seen
looks
it in Austin at all. So,
Right. Yeah. And then they integrated Lime bikes. Like,
yes.
I think is Lime only bikes, or do they have scooters too?
They have limes are scooters and bikes. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. They integrated in certain cities, their bikes and scooters are integrated into the Uber app.
They used to be here, and Lyft actually had their birds integrated, but now it's two separate apps.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, that's good. Doesn't quite feel like enough. So anyway,
Okay.
so they're seemingly trying, or at least they're marketing themselves as trying, but I don't have like overwhelming hope that they're going to reach that goal by 2030.
Yeah. That seems lofty. I mean, yeah, especially based on their business model. It just doesn't make sense to me.
No, exactly.
I would also like to point out, and maybe this is something we haven't considered very much, but the data centers that they use to power the apps also, we're talking about right now, everybody's saying AI, just the data centers and the electricity that those data centers use to generate AI to power it are taking up so much of the electrical grid and creating emissions from that. So I would assume, any app that uses a large amount of processing power, like Uber, Lyft, I mean, they've got to make an impact there by using electricity too, that we don't talk about in terms of, what that impact is on their sustainability efforts. And I sent you a post the other day where they said every Instagram post you make creates, a it has to be stored on a server somewhere that has to be powered by electricity. And the more we do it, the more of a footprint we're taking up. And, it's not something that Meta or TikTok or anybody advertises to us, is how much all these little data points contribute to carbon emissions just because of the amount of electricity it takes to keep them stored somewhere.
Yeah, and didn't it equate it to every Instagram post was like turning on a light bulb forever
Yeah.
or something crazy?
Yeah,
like
it never
that?
turns off. It's terrifying. Yeah. And so
Jesus
imagine,
Christ.
any huge tech operation that uses all of this processing power is going to have some kind of impact like that. And they
Yeah.
store, again, every ride you take, every rating you make.
Mm-hmm.
They
Every
use,
step you take, they'll be watching
yeah,
you.
yeah. I mean, they use algorithms to match certain riders with better drivers and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of data in there that I don't think we know just how magical. I mean, it's like a dating app. It's like
Yeah.
you get ranked
Mm-hmm.
and you get paired with people who have a similar rank to you. It's like this Black Mirror episode for Rideshares. But anyway,
Oh, that is weird. That's
yeah.
really weird.
Okay, and not to get us too off track, but did you see, I think there's a lawsuit against Uber specifically about how they use data from users' phones. And it's kind of a privacy violation, but it's more of an ethics. I don't know. The one story I read was Uber can see how much phone charge you have, how much phone battery you have. And so two people standing in the same place can ask for a ride, and Uber will quote a higher price to the person with a lower battery percentage because they're more desperate to book the trip. So, like, it would be a $15 ride for this person who's got 78% battery, but for
What?
this person who's got 18%, it would be a $30 trip.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy to think about because my battery's always low.
You might be getting worse quotations on your
Whoa.
Uber
'Cause
rides.
I went in the middle of the freaking day. No rush hour, nothing. It was not surge time. And they charged me $60 to take a 30-minute ride to the airport.
Yeah.
$2 a minute.
Yeah. I mean,
And I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Maybe,
and
my phone was probably almost dead, so.
yeah. Well, and yeah,
crazy.
it's like they're like, you'll be desperate for, and they don't outline, and like, you don't know why your ride costs what it does with Uber or Lyft. They just quote you whatever they feel like, and you accept it, because if you're not willing to look at other options, if you're calling a Lyft or Uber from the airport and you've got 18% battery, you're probably not going to use your phone to look up when the next train comes, or, so they're like, we got you, so we can get more money out of you. And they don't,
Wow.
taxi cabs have to outline in most places exactly how much a trip from the airport costs.
Right.
If you're taking it to Lower Manhattan from JFK, it's this much money.
Yeah, and sometimes taxis are cheaper.
Yeah, often. Especially because they don't do surge pricing like that. And they can't just, there's no capricious upgrading of your, rate base. There's a lot of other things that go into it, like your star rating or whatever could have an impact on your thing. And that can be a biased and racist measure of what kind of driver or rider you are,
Right.
So that's, yeah, it's,
yeah, because like, if I get in and I just say hi and I'm polite, but I don't talk, like, is that can get me a bad rating?
Yeah, or,
Like,
or if you're, from a poor part of town, or, are you going to get a poorer rating? And inevitably, yes, people of color are going to get a different rating than white people. Like, that's just American racism, and it's systemic, quiet workings behind the scenes where, we can't call it out because it's not explicit. It's just very implicit bias, and we don't talk about it, and we don't recognize it. But you're much, much more likely to have those implicit biases come out in a rating system like that.
Yeah, it literally is like Black Mirror.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's very much Black Mirror. And
Oh
yeah,
my God.
that stuff terrifies me.
I know.
And
I
yet,
know.
I still take Lyft to the airport. But the other thing
That's the
is,
thing.
yeah, it's convenient. The other thing is kind of the lack of accountability for issues that happen, the stories of sexual assault.
Oh yeah, there was so much that I was not going to get into. I talk a
Yeah.
little bit about like the social justice aspect at the end, but
Yeah.
yeah, Uber and Lyft both are, and probably some others are, just as companies,
Yeah.
like shady.
Yeah.
There's like no way to go about the whole. Well, I found it really interesting because it was 2020 when there was it was the California. In California, it was like the referendum or whatever, where they voted to allow Uber to continue paying its employees as if they were independent contractors. Is
The
that
opposite.
the deal?
They made them pay them as if they were employees. So they're considered employees. If they work a certain amount of hours, they have to be considered employees and not independent contractors.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
And
because that was the
then-
same. Yeah, that was the same time that I was working for the kickball league, and they couldn't consider us independent contractors anymore because of that California ruling.
Yeah, yeah. But apparently that was declared
Oh, it got kicked back, didn't it?
unconstitutional. Yeah, which I
Yeah.
didn't realize. But they're going to appeal and all this shit. So
Yeah.
who knows what's going to happen with it? But that was really, it's just like, oh God, I remember that whole debate, and people were on the side of Uber, and they're like normal people were like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. This is perfect, or like whatever. Like this is going to help small business, whatever.
Owners,
And I was just like,
yeah.
that's not.
No.
I don't think this is good.
No.
So
It's
there's
yeah, it feels like a student loan,
right.
Like the same kind of, well, they should know what they're getting into. And it's like,
Right.
well, you're promised all this stuff up front, but nobody tells you how hard it is to get to these milestones. Nobody tells you how much wear and tear is going to be on your car. Nobody
Right.
tells you like the stress of driving or
How much is going to be taken out of your rides for fees or whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
Like all
So
the things.
yeah. It also I know for a while Uber, and I think Lyft was too, you could buy your car through them and basically pay it off through Uber or Lyft, but it was like you were only allowed to drive a certain amount of miles, not for Lyft or Uber. It was basically like
What?
you got the company car and then you could pay it off. It was
you
just
got a company car that you had to pay for.
Yeah,
That's
it's
insane.
such a scam. It was insane.
It's that reminds me of Verizon or AT&T, where you can buy a phone through them and you pay exponentially more. You pay like a fee every month, and then you're paying probably like double. If you actually do the math, you're paying
the interest and
so
stuff.
much more than you would if you just bought the freaking phone.
Yeah. But some people just don't have that money outright, and that's taking advantage of people who have poor
It's so
credit or
frustrating.
no savings or living paycheck to
people who just
paycheck.
aren't paying attention. Like,
Yeah.
I think it would be so easy to just not pay attention to it and be like, oh yeah, okay,
That
this
sure
is
sounds like a great deal.
$25 a month. It sounds like a lot, but for
Yeah.
the rest of my life, $25
Yeah.
per month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's crazy. It's crazy out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick break because I forgot to. But
I was
going
gonna
to
say
now.
okay.
Yeah.
Break time.
Okay.
I'm in.
Okay, cool. And we're back. Are you back?
I'm back. I'm back. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. Yeah.
I could tell you weren't unmuted yet. That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I real quick looked into like our question we like to ask is this something a normal person could do or afford, which was a little different for this because ride sharing clearly isn't something that's like a goal
Right.
Right. So I think probably avoiding rideshare is the better question.
That's a
But
good question. Yeah.
so like basically like what could a normal person do or afford in terms of like transport when you're thinking about rideshare or not. So
Yeah.
you obviously could opt for other forms of transport like buses, trains, biking, or walking when possible. That's
Yeah.
certainly not always possible, as I know. You could pool rides, and pooling does reduce emissions, which makes logical sense, right?
If you're all going to the same place, it's better to
I
have
didn't even
one
think
car.
about that.
Yeah.
But I think the way it normally works, isn't it like as long as you're going in the same general direction,
Yeah.
then they'll put you together? Or at least
Yeah.
that's the idea. But obviously,
Yeah.
sometimes it probably doesn't work out that
So
well.
in terms of Uber or Lyft, that kind of ride pooling, I was even just thinking about with your friends,
Oh,
like
yeah. Or like
carpooling.
carpool. Like there are some ones for work I've heard of before.
Did Silicon Valley reinvent the bus again? That was a funny thing where they're like, we're saving all this. And it was basically just the city bus, but for Google employees or whatever.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but also pooling. So if you're specifically doing like Uber or Share or whatever the hell it's called,
Yeah.
it's usually cheaper, like you said. So like
Yeah.
a normal person, like it's not only the more sustainable option, but it's the cheaper option. So that's
Right.
good. That's nice.
Yeah.
If it's available in your city, Uber has an option. And I mostly looked at Uber just because there was too much.
Yeah.
Lyft might have something similar. It's called Uber Green.
Okay.
It's not available everywhere, but that basically means it's either a hybrid or an electric vehicle. That will
Okay.
pick
I
you
have
up.
seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be more expensive, most likely, but that's an option. And you can also push your ride hail companies and your local governments to do better. So
Yeah.
the National Resource Defense Council had a couple of specific action points that I appreciated because it's like push them to do better is so freaking vague. You're like, what does that even mean?
Tell them to do better. Good, you guys do better. Just yell it at City Hall and see what happens.
Exactly. Yell
Do
it in your
better.
yell it in your backyard and hope
Yeah.
it travels.
Hey, do better.
Yeah. Which is literally, next season is gonna be about advocacy, and that's gonna be really interesting because I'm so I'm just like in my soul not an activist type of person.
Yeah. Yep.
So that'll be really, I'm excited to find options for people who aren't like march on,
Yeah. Who aren't doing
protests.
marching.
Like I have panic attacks. I went to one march and I had a panic attack. So I'm not the kind of human that should be there.
I'm not a good marcher.
Yeah. Anyway.
I appreciate people who are, but I am not one.
Right. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So the NRDC says they have this one thing that they think will help where you encourage cities to use road pricing to manage congestion and encourage shared rides, which basically means like you implement congestion pricing programs that apply to both private and Lyft and Uber trips.
Yep.
That can help reduce overall driving.
I think I read about that. I didn't mention it in buses as well. Yeah.
Okay.
That's something that they recommend, like I know there's always a lot of pushback against stuff like that because it's like, well, I just got to get to work in the morning. It's like, yeah, well, maybe you should consider your choices. But at the same time, it means it incentivizes rich people to do whatever the hell they want and penalizes poor people for, But yeah, I promote paying for parking. I promote congestion pricing. I believe in those things because I think yeah. But anyway, yep.
So they also say you can redesign, this is exactly what we said with your episode, but like redesign the streets to prioritize low carbon transportation. So basically have better infrastructure.
Yeah. How about buses?
So encourage that.
Yeah.
And I've been like wanting to look into my city council stuff and just be like, what is this? And how can I attend? It's very intimidating for me, but it's an option.
Yeah.
I feel like you're more involved in that type of thing. So I'm going to be coming from the perspective of somebody who's like, huh?
I wouldn't say it. I mean, I've had to participate in civic government, municipal government stuff in the past, but I'm not like I could tell you the name of my council representative, you know.
Yeah.
But
So that's good.
yeah,
That's a step in the right direction.
she's in my Buy Nothing group on Facebook, so that's
Oh, there
nice.
you go. Nice. That's awesome. Mine still won't let me in, but it's fine. I participate in Free Cycle, so
There you go.
it's fine.
Find your own Buy Nothing group. Yeah.
Another thing that I really loved the idea of is encouraging electrification of cars with
Yeah.
more EV charging stations, because they're saying the more EV charging stations there are, the more likely people are to switch to electric
Yes.
vehicles if they can
That
afford
is
it.
the biggest anxiety. for
Which
sure.
makes so much sense, because I was going to rent an electric vehicle and the guy asked, this was in Indiana, and the guy asked where I was going, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're not gonna want to do that." I was like, "Damn it, really?"
Sucks. Yeah.
So he's like, "I'll give you the same price for a regular gas guzzler." So
You're like,
it's
but no. Yeah.
I was like, "All right, fine." So, and the NRDC says that these charging stations should be funded by Lyft and Uber.
Yes.
And that they should be available both to Lyft and Uber drivers, but also the public. I
Yes.
was like, dude, I love this.
100%. If you're using our public infrastructure and not paying for it, you should have to contribute. I agree.
Exactly. And another big thing that they said was like, this may not help with the environment, because it may actually it may bring prices up and basically push for fair labor practices for these companies. Just kind of like what you were saying. Like, that's probably going to make your rides cost more, therefore will push more people into possibly buying their own car and just like driving. But they said the environmental costs, basically it's not worth the environmental benefits if you have people who are suffering and who are being mistreated in the meantime.
Well, yeah.
So
I think that's something we come across a lot is
Yes.
you have to consider all of the impacts across. Yeah.
yeah, which is extremely hard to do.
Yes.
And also not
Oh, yeah.
really possible at all times of the day, but
Yeah.
we do our best, you know, as
Yeah.
humans. So, I really appreciated everything from their article.
Yeah, it sounds like a
And-
great read.
Yeah, I mean, we've used them as a resource before, and I said their name sounds so antagonistic, the National Resources Defense Council. But
Yeah.
they have always been so just like level-headed and legit. I don't know, everything they say I'm just like in love with. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's kind of it. You might hear Charlie stomping around like a little elephant. It's fine. So does the Earth-friendly message need to come back to Earth? And I would say absolutely. Ride-sharing is worse for the environment, and no amount of green promises will change that fact unless they want to actually help normal human beings who are driving for them switch to electric vehicles. Then we can talk.
Yeah.
And like I said, they're incentivizing them, but it's just not enough. I mean, it's not. They're so expensive. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, granola rating on just rideshare in general. We have
you have
every
to explain.
episode.
Yes. Okay. I was
Yeah.
gonna be like, you have to explain what that means.
What is it?
I forget
Every ep-
sometimes. Some people
I
don't
know,
know what granola rating is.
Yeah. So every episode we rate each system or product or whatever it is on a granola rating, because we're good hippies and we
Crunchy,
like.
crunchy hippies.
So it goes from soggy to break your tooth off crunchy, and you obviously want it to be your granola to be super crunchy, because crunchy is
Crunchy's
great. I
best.
don't know. Yeah. So for ride shares, I said soggy.
Yep.
Like lowest of the low, because there just isn't, as of right now, there's not any real benefit. It's actually better to drive, in a lot of cases, to just drive yourself in your personal vehicle, which is what these study shows. I know, isn't that crazy?
Not what I wanted to hear, but yeah, it
I know.
sucks, but it makes sense.
I know.
Bummer. Bummer.
Yep.
Bursting my bubble here.
Sorry.
It's okay. I needed it burst. I am going to start driving myself to the airport, though.
I know. I actually think I will too, because like $8 a day, that's really not
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, the bus doesn't go there from here, so.
Oh yeah, mine certainly doesn't. I am gonna take the metro in a couple weekends into DC for my
Neat.
birthday. So
Yay!
I'll let you know how that goes. I mean, it's funny. I used to take it every day. Now it feels.
I know. I was like, oh,
but
it's exciting.
it used to be like my commute, but
Yeah.
I'm like,
I'm
man,
like,
I
oh my
haven't done
God.
this in forever.
Yeah, I haven't
It
been on the
has
metro.
changed too since COVID, so I hope it's not every 25, 30 minutes.
Oh my
but
gosh.
we'll see. I think it'll be better. Probably. I don't know.
Jeez.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well,
I should look
I
that
hope
up
it's fun.
before I commit.
Yeah, maybe before you get on the train and you're like, shoot, I'm late to
Yeah,
dinner.
4 years to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so next week we are talking about electric scooters.
Which falls into its shared mobility again.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. It's probably going to have a little bit of overlap, but
Yeah.
it's
Which is
a
good.
different. Yeah, it's a different
We're
beast
building.
for sure.
Yeah, we're building on concepts throughout the season, so that's good. We're learning as we
Yeah.
go too.
Yes, exactly. So, how should we?
Well, if you haven't checked out our Patreon, please do,
Oh, yeah.
because this last month's was really worth it. It's a
Intense.
Patreon. Yeah, patreon.com/greeningupmyact, and you can get a free 7-day trial. So give it a whirl.
Yeah, we talked about Ozempic.
Yeah, it was.
Food.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about it. So
I know. Me too.
awesome.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks for listening.
Thank you.